Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about true crime. Now, I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about not a true crime case in particular at all. I'm talking about the genre of entertainment that true crime is. Feels a little bit incorrect to even call it entertainment, but at the end of the day, people do listen to true crime podcasts, watch true crime documentaries, aside from it being a source of information, obviously, and even a source of self-safety in a lot of ways, because there is a lot to be learned about how criminals act and what they do to victims, and thinking about ways that you can avoid being in that situation, as distressing as it is to think about. It realistically, for a long time, has also been a source of entertainment in the sense of how many movies have we seen made about historical serial killers that get talked about all the time, even though some of these things happened over 100 years ago. I wanted to go into talking about true crime content on YouTube because I asked you guys about your opinions on it. I have my own, which I'll be sharing in a second, and I kind of wanted to talk about how it's done and when it starts to become a problem. Before we talk about the concept of true crime and how it's treated here, I did want to thank our sponsor, which is NordVPN. NordVPN launched a cybersecurity awareness campaign that'll run through the fall. The campaign shares vital information about security threats and tips in order for you to stay safe. Using my URL, nordvpn.com/readytoglare, you will get a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus 4 free additional months. This is the best deal because using my URL, you get an extra month as opposed to other platforms. These days more than ever, cybersecurity is to be taken seriously. One of the many features NordVPN offers is protect your data. This includes a strict no-loss policy, so there's no tracking, collecting, or sharing of your private data. On top of this, your IP is masked, so you're not being tracked while you browse online. Finally, there's also a kill switch, which makes sure your data won't ever be exposed. NordVPN is committed to keeping you safe online and even offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Use my URL, nordvpn.com/readytoglare, to stay safe online and browse freely without any worry. Thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. So as I was saying, there's a lot of debate online about what is appropriate in terms of true crime, which I already think is a difficult discussion to have. Here and there, I'll be including some of the replies that you guys offered under my tweet about your takes, what you think, so on and so forth. There are 2 main points that I think are relatively make or break in terms of true crime. So some names were being dropped. I don't want to name anyone here because it's frankly beside the point. I want to talk about the concepts, because if we're going to go talking about specific creators, this video is going to go on for a real long time. One of the things that I think are essential, and this goes for basically anything you cover in terms of credibility, tone is such a central thing because effectively it marks how seriously you're going to be taken, like I said. But aside from that, it's also the respect you're giving to the victims. It's also the respect you're giving to the situation generally, the people who survived the victims, the people who knew them. The respect aspect, in my opinion, is the most significant one. Also because while you're respecting the victims, there also has to be a certain way, in my opinion, that you need to discuss criminals, murderers, serial killers, whatever the case may be. There's a very thin line between talking about these people in an interested way, which is fine to be interested in all of this, and talking about them as if this is some shit that happened in the high school cafeteria. That's really the point where I draw the line, when things start to get turned into caricatures, whether someone intends to or not. It takes away any kind of seriousness, any kind of importance to actually what happened, and it turns into he said, she said, girls gossiping in the bathroom, just stupid shit. Aside from all the moral implications there, I just don't know how that is even deemed as interesting when something is being retold as if it's just this silly little story. Now, one big thing that people were talking about in terms of tone is also, I suppose you could call these mannerisms, body language. But for example, there are a variety of videos that basically are mukbangs in true crime or makeup in true crime. Any innocuous activity plus true crime. A lot of people had a problem with this, and I understand why. What I will say is that, in my opinion, again, tone defines everything. So if you want to do your makeup while you're talking about true crime, I do not find that inherently a problem. I don't find that inherently a problem for the sole reason that if I'm sitting here and talking to you and I'm doing all this shit with a brush or something, if I'm still serious, if I'm just doing that to do something with my hands while I'm talking to you, I don't see the issue there, because I'm not telling you, hey, this person was murdered. Anyway, this shade is called Orchid and it's one of my favorites. By the way, here's my discount code on this palette. That is one thing. If I'm just doing this and talking about something like I am now, it's not going to change anything in terms of the seriousness, in my opinion. Just because I'm not focusing on what I'm doing here, I'm talking to you while I happen to be doing something. I heard that there are people who watch that kind of content with art as well. I think all of that is pretty harmless so long as you maintain the tone of something terrible happened, we're going to respect it and we're going to talk about it in the most informed way that we can. In the same way, I think with mukbangs, that's like another big thing. It's generally the same rule. For the most part, the rule I apply, if I were out to lunch with a friend, we're both eating, right? So basically what people do in mukbangs, if we happen to talk about a true crime case, we can do that while eating and not remove importance of the case. That being said, again, it comes back to how you do things. If you're gonna talk about it and then interrupt describing a grisly murder by saying that your noodles are so good or something, maybe consider a different genre. Now, an obvious point, which I don't really think needs saying, but I'll say it anyways, respect towards the families and the victims. Now, for content, this is where shit gets real spicy. So, again, very particular creators came up with this one, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you can guess who they are because there were a couple of names being brought up quite consistently. In terms of the content, like I said, it needs its own respect, and this connects directly to jokes. I have quite a dark sense of humor. It's just been a coping mechanism for a long time. That being said, as a general rule, when I make my stupid dark jokes, whatever you want to call them, they're based on me and my experiences only. First of all, I'm personally uncomfortable making dark jokes about other people's shit because truly, I don't know what they're going through. Aside from that, I think one thing that is kind of relieving about that kind of dark humor about yourself is that you can say whatever the fuck you want because it's your own story and you're allowed to make fun of it, you're allowed to be sad about it, you can do whatever you want and no one can say shit because it's yours, and I think that's actually really freeing. That being said, in terms of what we're talking about, I don't think people have any place doing that with serial killers or any other type of criminal. I just find it in poor taste. That's all I'm gonna say there. I'm not gonna make any excuses for making jokes at the expense of these victims' families. I do have an explanation, in my opinion, as to why people do that. Not everyone, some people. I think some people get nervous talking about things or just talking to a camera, period, which is why some people, I think, eat or do their makeup because they want to do something with their hands, which is something I understand because I fidget a little bit as well. However, when it comes to jokes, I think that's kind of the same reaction. It's just like instead of doing something with your hands, you just say something. The question also is, why didn't you just edit that out? And I think that's also why people get mad, because of course a stupid joke can slip, but you're not live. Edit that shit out when you realize, okay, if the families saw this, would they be happy about it? The other thing is that both of those things also involve movement. And the reason why I bring that up is because there are movements between like showing you the palette or, you know, like lifting your fork while you're eating the noodles or whatever the case may be, there are moments where I think people almost forget. Maybe that's me being optimistic. I don't know if people forget, but it's like they become less aware of the fact that they're talking about something terrible that happened, and they'll make a comment like, oh, these noodles are great, or oh my god, this shade of blue is cool. I don't know. But regardless, letting out these kinds of comments and remarks that are completely unrelated to what we're talking about, that are completely inappropriate and just so beyond the realm of what you should really be talking about if you're going to be talking about a true crime case, that I think is one of the central things that makes people fucking lose their shit. And it's understandable. I think it kind of goes without saying as well, But when we do talk about these things, I think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of the family or a friend or something like that. Now, granted, most of us, luckily, will not know what it's like to survive someone who was murdered or other horrible things. That being said, when someone makes those jokes or makes the comment about the palate or the noodles, if you were in the shoes of a family member or friend, would you not want to fucking break a piece of cement on that person's head? Someone talking about the death of a loved one, making shit up, I don't even know how to fully verbalize, but it is something worth considering, because I think that's why a lot of people get upset, because they think about the families, the friends, so on and so forth. Those were the central things that people were bringing up. I do think that, of course, it's also about the credibility of the person at the end of the day. After a certain point, it's also difficult to get your credibility back, as in, if you are making jokes, if you are making light of a lot of these tragedies, no matter what you do after a certain threshold, I just don't think that you can get that credibility back. You can't afford to make many mistakes if you're talking about such tragedies. And I think that's something that might be overlooked, because people always think, oh yeah, well, I can correct myself, I can go back and say that I shouldn't have said X, Y, and Z. But I just don't know in that genre how far that really will go. There were quite a few people in the comment section who were also talking about the fact that they used to like creator X until someone pointed out thing Y, and then they couldn't unsee it and they just stopped abruptly. So it wasn't even like there was this groundbreaking moment. It's just even someone's comment in passing was eye-opening enough for people to be like, shit, this was never okay, and I didn't even realize it, which I think is kind of what's happening now. We're seeing a little bit of a tide turn, in my opinion. And in fact, a lot of people have been saying, I loved this for years, and then just recently, a comment rubbed them the wrong way. They read something, and then they were like, oh, this was never okay all along. Anyways, guys, please let me know what you think down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.